please.
Yeah, going live now. Okay, we're live.
Okay, many thanks. Welcome everyone to tonight's Environment and Communities review panel into integrated enforcement. This is a recommendations meeting, and I apologise for it starting slightly late, but unfortunately we all had a few problems joining with Zoom. So I'm going to start with the agenda as laid out. So item 1 is any declarations of, apologies for absence, please. Does anybody have any? I have one from Tina Mackenzie Boyle.
I have no other apologies.
Okay, thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. It's laid out on the agenda paper. I'm not going to read it all out, and I'm sure members are very familiar with it. So if you do have any declarations of interest that you know of now, please declare it. If not, then please declare it when you know. Okay, item 3, which is our substantive item tonight, is to discuss. Oops, I'm going to put my camera on. Sorry, I do apologise. I haven't put my camera on. Is to discuss the recommendations that we'd like to put forward. These recommendations have gone to exec members and senior officers for their comments. So the first one is, hopefully you've all received them as well. The executive member for planning and transport to contact the relevant ministers with a request for local authorities to have greater power in declining retrospective planning and prevent abuse of the planning system. And we're hoping that this should actually be achieved by the end of April this year. We fully understand, and Councillor Turrell is online tonight, so hopefully Chris might be able to give us a bit more insight. We fully understand that it is national policy, but there is no harm in letting government know that their national policy sometimes isn't fit for purpose, or it needs tweaking here, there and everywhere. So I think those comments would be very valid, and we might not be the only authorities suffering such atrocities within our planning department. So Chris, would you like to add anything, please?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to do this because among many things that the government have been discussing recently about planning is this concern that in some respects it's too remote from the communities that it's there to serve. So I'm quite happy to put these concerns down and send them to the minister and see what sort of response we get. I don't know that it will be a particularly quick response, but I'm more than happy to do it, and we'll see what comes back.
Yeah, as I say, Chris, if you don't write to them, then they think everything's hunky-dory. So I'm sure if a lot of people didn't go on strike, they would think everything was hunky-dory. Any members, any other questions, please, regarding that recommendation for either myself or Chris, or points of view, or anything you'd like to add to it?
I think, Chairman, I might have my hand up. Michael Brossard, is it showing or not?
Yes.
Yeah, I can see your hand now, Michael.
Oh, fine. Okay, then, fine. In that case, then, I endorse what Chris has said. I think it's a difficult one because, to be fair to some residents, they are actually oblivious maybe of the planning regulations. And if they're putting up a conservatory or a garden shed or something where the house has already been extended, they may not be aware of the planning regulations. There are also, I have to say, Chairman, those situations, though, residents actually abuse the planning application system and really quite simply hope for the best. And what happens, of course, they put in a planning application, that may then be refused, they then go to appeal, the appeal may then be allowed or might be actually refused. I just wonder if it might be appropriate. I'm mindful of Andrew Hunter's comments that he had actually made with regard to point 1 that the recommendation, Chairman. I wonder whether we might change that from the last line that says this would involve a complete change in the national planning system to this may involve a review of the national planning system. I only ask that, Chairman, because it's not black and white. And I'm going to say there are, as I said earlier on, residents who maybe don't understand the planning system, but I just feel that we're being maybe slightly strict in terms of the regulations. But that's for me to comment on, and whether Chris actually wants to come back and make any other comment on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think it's sort of like, yeah, Chris could write and ask for it to be reviewed and looked at again because of, and I think putting some examples in, because we have had a couple of examples in the borough recently in the last 2 years I know of, whereby certain plans have been put in and then builders have been working to totally different plans.
Yes.
So that is a blatant misuse of the planning. So those sort of things should basically have no right of appeal. That's, I think we need to really get tough. And it's not just us as Bracknell Forest, I think it's all local authorities. So Chris, and just to say welcome, Bob, got finally in.
Okay, yes, I mean, I'm happy if you've got, if you've got a list of concerns, I can follow those up and we can take that from there.
Okay, many thanks, Chris.
See what response we get.
Okay, any other questions, please, before we move on?
Oh, I apologise, Chair. I can't see how to put my hand up, but just
shout then, Sandra.
Okay. So I could put my video on. Just to say, it may not be appropriate for this particular point, but the email that I sent to you just after Christmas about unauthorised roadworks in our borough, and whether or not the council or we as a committee feel that the penalties, the fines imposed on these companies commensurate to the level of inconvenience that residents are suffering from.
Yeah, I was actually going to include that, Sandra, on the one.com.
Okay, no worries.
So,
yep.
So yeah,
I just thought while Chris is here,
Yeah. I mean, I think Chris is with us all night, so
okay.
We will come to that one.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Very good. Thank you.
If you want me just to mention on that, those fines are set by statute. So, there's a bit of limitation there. That the key thing is to get the thing reported so that the team can go out and take the necessary action.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Right.
And moving swiftly on, item recommendation 2 is actually to raise awareness of information regarding work permits for highways work by improving the visibility of one.network on the council website. And this should hopefully be achieved by the end of May 2023. And following on from what Sandra said, we need to really highlight to residents that, if they feel that there's unauthorised works occurring, causing them great inconvenience, to let our highways department know very quickly. And as we found out that we do have 2 highway officers on the road, so to speak, all the time, and they will be there very quickly. And some works, yes, have to be done as an emergency, but if it's not an emergency, then I don't see what excuse the companies can actually give us. And if they haven't applied for the permit in time and been given permission, then I think we should be issuing the maximum fine permissible. So anybody wish to come in on that or to add things?
Chairman, Michael Brossard, can you hear me? Because I
can hear you, Michael.
Fine. Okay, thank you for that. Have we actually missed recommendation number 2, which is develop designated work streams for planning applications, or did we cover that?
It was basically, the response was that only one officer is appointed. There's not duplication.
Well, yeah, because Andrew did actually make a comment that about there's a single officer actually representing applications. I think the only comment I would make, Chairman, is that if for whatever reason that officer left, then obviously someone else would actually take it over. There would be continuity.
I think rather than duplicating it, I mean, hopefully they would know that the officer has actually left, and they would know what cases were open and what cases were delegated to that relevant officer that had left. So that's what it would then get redisputed.
So
yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm just looking for my video. Yes, I think I raised this because a number of times an offer has started off with an enforcement issue, and then it's been taken over by another officer, and there seems to be a sort of big communication void in terms of progress and getting information out. So that was my concern about it. And in addition, some areas that we have policies for example, I'll illustrate the placing of boards and sales banners, shall we say, on the highway in terms of the edge of the road. There's a policy that needs a planning application to ratify it, and we seem to have any number of those around that are never pursued. So it's to make sure that we do cover all the things that we're supposed to be, that we have policies for. Otherwise, why have we got the policy?
Okay. If we just finish off this recommendation then, and then we go back to recommendation 2 and just totally tweak it, because the good thing with any estate agent board, we know which estate agent has actually put that board up.
It's not necessarily estate agent boards, John. It can be, well, I'll just use, for example, my area, you know, there's several companies that have got boards on the sidewalk. So Oak Tree Nurseries for one, and there's some horse type thing for another. I mean, it's not just estate agents boards, it's any boards that advertise the business need to be ratified by a planning application to make it a legal, well, to make it legal according to our policy. But that is never pursued or brought to bear unless someone you know, raises it. And so my question is, you know, we obviously it's not chased because there's enough other work to do, but why do we have the policy if it's only sort of taken up sometimes and not others?
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is looking at strategy and policy, so it's going to be, it could be a recommendation. But it's like any of those boardings, they've all got a phone number or an email address. So it's very easy for somebody in the office to send out an email to everyone saying, you know, you need to take that down ASAP, apply for planning permission. And if you transgress again, we will automatically just enforce and fine.
Well, it is, John, but I mean, because of the caseload, the workload, and no one's particularly designated to it, there's other priorities, it doesn't happen, is what I'm saying. And so therefore, we have all this street junk, shall we call it, that's not regulated, and that was one of the reasons behind, you know, having designated areas for enforcement officers, so we don't just sometimes you know, make people raise a planning application and others don't do it.
I think Andrew's point was that once enforcement is happening, then one officer deals with it. So I think this is slightly different to what Andrew was probably interpreting. So, Chris, do you want to come in on this, please?
Yeah, I mean, it is very irritating, and there have been instances where people have been contacted and told to take things down. There have been instances where they put them back up again, and it's how much officer time you spend on doing some of these things. But the large builders' hoardings they actually need they need specific planning. You know, they need specific planning permission. So usually have a bit more success with those. I mean, it has to be looked at both ways though, because with some of those, I mean, actually, if you want people to buy the stuff on site and move on, then actually it's better to advertise it and get it shifted. But you know, I do take the point. I mean, and in some cases, you know, where they're dangerous and so forth, that's going to be more of that's going to get more of an impetus. Again, it is down to reporting and persistence, I'm afraid. Moira is right in the sense that the officers do have quite a lot of they have quite a lot of work to do, but also they can't be on the ground all the time. If somebody does something, they're not, unless it's drawn to their attention, they're if they don't go down that road, then they're not they're not going to see it. So yes, it's a bit of a finding a balance. I think in terms of officers dealing with cases and a change of officer, sometimes people do leave. Some enforcement cases are very intricate and they do go on for some time. I mean, the ideal is that a case is assigned to an officer, they clear it up, and the action is taken all by the same officer who has the same details, who's fully aware of the details and can keep up the continuity. But you do sometimes get some very long-running and intractable cases. There's that they are very much in the minority, though.
So, Chris, we did touch upon it previously. Can we then not look at actually employing an officer, but we don't have to have a senior officer with masses of qualifications, but an officer that can actually go around and look at the work permits for roadworks and look at all these transgressions? No, because you've got people like Wayne Scott
permits for road things. I mean, that's done by a different team. That is done by a different team. And the whole point there is, yes, we have had a scheme for a number of years. People, so for people to claim they don't know that we have a scheme is wrong. And the officers are good on hauling people up when they find them and imposing the penalty charge notices and the fines as appropriate to get it done. But there is a lot of activity.
Chris, you didn't let me finish. So, what I was asking was the people that are doing the work permits, could they not then, whilst they're out and about, look for all these banners and posters and everything else? Because all that's going to happen is if we don't start taking action, we're just going to become littered with them and they're going to become a total eyesore. Yes,
I think the point is, I mean, they would need to, they would need to know whether or not they got permission for it. I think possibly they could, people note something that's particularly, that's particularly ostentatious, but they may well come back to find that it's already been given permission for. I mean, there's some pretty ostentatious stuff put up with some of our recent large-scale developments, and yet that was, permission was applied for and granted in the normal way. But certainly, can look into how they might do that in terms of just, if anything they particularly see, they can report back on.
Okay. Sandra, you got your hand. Moira, are you finished, or do you want to come back on that?
No, that's fine. I think the general thing is that the policies are not fairly applied. Okay. And if we had specific people responsible for it, it might help that situation. That's all.
Okay,
thank you.
Sandra, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for Chris actually while he's with us. Just going back to these unauthorised roadworks, I mean, it's good that people are checking permits. The post-works inspection, what powers of enforcement does the officer have to ensure that the engineers working on the road, to ensure that they put the verges back in order and things like that, where they're all rucked up?
It's very clear. I mean, they need to replace like with like, that the surface needs to go back. So it's probably easier, to see a result quickly with hard surfaces because they were required to use particular materials. Verges, it takes a while for the verge to re-establish, and so you will get earth and seeding and things, and that's very much dependent on the weather. If you get very cold weather, it's not going to take. If you get very hot and dry weather, again, it's going to be. It will take more slowly. but I think the overall thing is, if there are any particular issues, then yes, raise them with the Highways Network team, and then they can be tracked. But
Okay,
on the
they go
whole,
back.
it's,
Yeah.
that they are picked up on, and it's much, that aspect of it is much clearer, because they know what has to be put back.
Okay. All right.
Mm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Chairman
Brossard?
Michael Brossard. Chairman, can I just make a comment? In fact, Moira raised a very good point, and that my concern that I've got is the blighting with regard to fly posting, and it's scrap cars, for instance, it's housing developments and such like. What I do find, though, within where I am, is the engagement of the residents who actually turn up with their hacksaws or their scissors or whatever and actually remove those signs. The sadness, of course, is that in removing them, what they're left with are those black tie wraps, which are actually secured to lampposts and such like. But I do feel that the residents themselves are very engaging in actually removing what I think is a blight in our community with this fly posting.
I totally agree with you, Michael. Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Anybody have any further points to make on the recommendation regarding Network before we move on, please? Sorry, I've lost my Zoom.
I can still see you, John. I think
No, I just can't get my screen up.
Oh,
to
right.
see who's
Okay.
participating and everything else. So,
Okay. Well,
no, got it back now. Okay, so we're going to go back to recommendation 2 then, so that we would like to reword it to have the wording that we develop and maintain the policy of fly posting, and that consistency is achieved throughout the whole borough. So would anybody like to put any more meat on that bone?
no. I'm happy with that. I don't know if Moira wants to add to it, or
Moira.
No, I think that pretty much covers what we want in a very loose way. So that means it can be interpreted how that's going to happen, rather than us being prescriptive about how we want it done.
Yeah, and it's then specific for the fly posting, which I think is what you because if somebody puts a board up, that's fly post, that's fly posting.
Yep.
So I think that would cover it. And it's then any officer can deal with that, basically. And it'd be down to us as members to ensure that these things are starting to be removed, or that we start seeing planning applications coming through, because we all see planning applications.
Yep.
And I'm sure they'd all be delegated. They wouldn't be going to a committee. So you'd actually see that they've all been delegated, and we all get our own wards. So we know exactly what's going on. And then we can then just keep officers informed when we see new ones coming up.
Yeah. Sandra's got her hand up, I
Sandra,
see.
please.
Thanks, Michael, of course, because John can't see it.
Yeah, I can now, Sandra.
Oh, you can now.
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
my sight back.
All right. So we have had such a big event going on here in our ward. I would just like to see something in the wording of the recommendations that shows our public that we are monitoring and enforcing penalties on unauthorised roadworks. I would just somehow like it woven in, so that if our residents, either at the full council meeting or this particular meeting, are checking in on us, that they are aware that we are aware and that we are on the case. Do you see my concern? Because I'm looking at Esther's, got it up here now in front of me. I'm looking at the points that we're making, and I can't actually see any specific wording about that.
Okay, so that's basically going back to the
Yes,
network.
One.network. So it says to
Okay.
raise awareness of information regarding work permits for highways work by improving the visibility of OneNet, but that is for our residents.
Okay, so what you want is something in there along the lines of how residents can report any roadworks not listed on that one.network.
Yeah,
And that can then have a filter through to the officers whereby they will then be able to take enforcement action.
yes. And you know that we, yes, that would be fine. So that shows that we are enforcing unauthorized.
Yeah.
You know, we are on the case.
Okay,
Yeah.
so but then if we improve the visibility of one.network,
Yep.
within that actual piece where people go to, there could be a little bit on there reporting unauthorized works.
But they won't know that they're unauthorized. That's the thing, Chair. They thought that we were causing all this disruption locally.
Okay,
They
okay,
think
so
it's
they
the
thought it's
council.
Bracknell Forest.
Yeah, because they don't know. They don't know if it's authorized or not. You know, so
Okay, but then if it's not on one.network, then I'm thinking it would probably be unauthorized.
yes. So
So what we could do is say, if you don't see these roadworks on one.network, please
Yeah.
report it via this form and have a form on there.
Yeah.
It gets pinged straight to highways. Highways then can write straight back to that resident and say, thanks for it. It has been authorised. It's just been late getting on the system. Or thanks, we will have an officer out there today to investigate.
yes, that would be good. And also, you know, if there could be some statement in our recommendation that we don't approve of unauthorised roadworks and that penalty fines will be levied.
Well, I would say we would follow the enforcement procedure and
Protocols.
policy.
Okay, which they won't know about, but you know.
Yeah, but then we can just say that, you know, any wrongdoings. So Esther, if you can just put a little bit more meat on that one for us.
Yeah, will do.
Lovely, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
That's right.
Yep.
So recommendation 4.
No, well,
Well,
sorry, Chairman, Nick has got his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Nick.
Just following on from what Sandra was saying, I'm assuming that we might clarify if we have emergency roadworks going in, then it will be clarified to the resident that they're actually fixing the water main rather than delaying you for any reason. So
I think there should be a little caveat on there that says, you know, emergency works are obviously subject to a retrospective application.
Do they still have to put that in retrospectively then?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
That is what happens.
Right. Okay.
I mean, because you know, if you had an extreme emergency, it's obviously, you know, if the public were in danger, if something wasn't done, it's obviously preferable for them to get straight on and do the work and then follow up with the admin. So there is, you know, that's dealt with in a slightly different.
It's a little bit like those emergency works on Downshire Way, Nick.
Yeah, no. I was thinking, because the water guys are forever doing, repairing water leaks, aren't they? So they must be doing it.
Yeah. I
I
don't know what it's like around your way, Nick, but I've seen some spectacular bursts.
Yeah.
And yes, they cause a hell of a lot of mess, and they need to be fixed.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but they definitely have to go retrospective, Nick. Okay, so recommendation 4 is to increase the use of CCTV within enforcement. Sorry, I've just got to get a different screen up. Oh, right. So it's actually to change it slightly, to look to further develop the use of CCTV as an enforcement tool. The objective of this is to provide photographic evidence intended to simplify the enforcement process when issuing fines. For example, fly tipping. It is also intended to act as a deterrent and to give reassurance to the public with respect to issues such as fly tipping hotspots. This will be an ongoing process. However, an update will be expected within 12 months' time. Is everybody happy with that new wording?
Yes, Chairman. Yes,
Michael?
yes. No, I'm happy with that. I'm saying,
Oh, you're happy with that? Okay.
well, yep. The television program earlier this week of fly tipping, where someone's caught on CCTV, was prosecuted, actually went to prison, and it was lovely to see his transit van actually being crushed. There's a certain pleasure in actually seeing the grabber coming down and crushing the transit van and thinking to themselves they deserve what they got. I mean, fly tipping really blights society, also with things like asbestos and such like, and people who've done bathrooms and kitchens and such like. I think the more prosecutions we can achieve through the PPC, the better that we will achieve. The public will actually understand that they have a responsibility when they arrange for people to take the rubbish away, that they must engage with a trade license provider and ensure that they are actually properly validated. The business of actually people, just handing over money and hoping for the best, I hope is in the past. But CCTV is actually a very good deterrent. It's also a very good deterrent where people actually abuse parking regulations.
Yeah, something I would like to see is actually better use of CCTV for parking regulations. But I think there was something saying that we can't do it legally or something. So I'm going to be looking into that a bit more within the licensing and safety, and with the public protection, because other councils can do it. So I can't see why we can't as a council. But that will be looked at a little bit more. Everybody happy to move on to the next one? See no hands or cameras on, so
I'm happy.
good,
All happy.
lovely. So item 5 is to increase enforcement through the development of the Community Safety Accreditation Scheme, or CSAS as we like to call it. Training to cover enforcement of activities where it would provide additionality to the existing enforcement toolkit. In particular, to examine the use of the power to stop vehicles, in addition to look at the effectiveness of the existing partnership arrangement with the Lexington security operations. And this will be an ongoing process with an update expected within 12 months. So we've got our CSAS champion online. And it was thanks to Chris that I think we all become aware of CSAS, Ian, that we all become aware of CSAS. And it's nice that if we can get officers trained with the authority to stop vehicles, then when we plan activities such as stopping overweight vehicles, taxis and everything else, at the moment we need Thames Valley Police to be present to stop those vehicles. And unfortunately, Thames Valley Police can pull out at the last moment. So it then means everybody and other agencies have been let down. So if we can basically have some in-house officers trained to stop vehicles legally and safely, then I think that is a very good win for the council. Anybody like to come in on that? Especially Mr. Kirk. Go for it, Ian.
Hi, John. Sorry, all fingers and thumbs there. Yeah, I very much in support of this recommendation, and I think we've come a long way. And I think the power of CSAS is more than just specific issues around criminal activity. It's all about the issue of antisocial behaviour, and I think it will give teeth to our enforcement. And I'm very supportive, and thank you to all members for their support as well on this initiative.
No, thank you, Ian, for making it, making us totally aware of it. I'm sure that 4 years ago, none of us had ever heard of it. So we've certainly been well educated in the last 4 years, thanks to you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Okay, that's all right. Members, any other questions regarding that, please? Or is everybody happy with that? Okay, I see no hands. So the final recommendation is to improve communication on the council website to include greater coverage and reporting of success stories within enforcement, including successful prosecutions, and improve communications that increase clarity and awareness of enforcement process across the different areas. Progress on this should be expected imminently and reviewed within 12 months. So anybody, I think something like the second bullet point could actually include what we talked about earlier, making sure that residents are aware that emergency roadworks, can go ahead, but that retrospective permits would be needed, and how to actually just, notify us all. And again, on that part, they could actually be referred back to one.network. And I think the more we can refer people to different links and integrate them all, then the better it would be for people to actually, don't matter where they're looking, they might actually be able to see a link that will actually take them rather than actually finding the exact page first time. Michael.
Oh, yes, thank you for that, Michael. Yeah, thank you for that, John. I think we are actually very proactive in terms of communication, in terms of, I think, the Bracknell News on the website, I think with Town and Country. I also think on social media, we can do that through, obviously, the parishes and the councils and such like. I think the key to me, my mind, John, is in actually making the public aware of how proactive we are in actually achieving the outcomes that we have. And I think the better that we can achieve that through our comms department, the better. And the public needs to be aware that we have actually got teeth, and and people are prosecuted.
I think we need to make it, that unfortunately officers can't do it all. So they do need intelligence, and that intelligence should come from councillors. So when you're walking your wards, you should be able to spot things that you think are a bit untoward on your ward, and our residents are also our eyes and ears. So the more intelligence our officers can be given, then the more prosecutions and the better and safer our borough will become. Excuse me. Anybody else have a question or additional comment?
Just to say, I think we've got some good recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Sandra.
And also, Chairman, to thank Esther for the work that she's put into it.
Yeah. Before I close the meeting, I was certainly going to thank Esther for all her hard work. But again, Mr. Brossard, you've stolen my thunder, and I thank you for that. I did tell you to make it your New Year's resolution not to steal my thunder anymore.
Okay, I must read your script in future.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay, so members, if nobody else has any other comments or have thought of a last minute recommendation, or you want to put a bit more meat on any of the recommendations, then I'd like to thank you all for your time tonight. And again, I'd especially like to thank Esther for all our hard work in, putting these recommendations together, going back to the officers, and I'm sure that we're going to be putting a little bit more bone on some of those recommendations, and I'm sure Esther will put them through and around back to everyone else for you to read, and hopefully they will go back out to the officers just to make sure the officers are okay, and then hopefully we'll see them all in a glossy report that will be produced quite shortly. So thank you everyone for your time tonight, and hopefully you'll be able to catch the second half of the exciting Oxford Arsenal game. So
sorry, Chairman, what is the score?
I have no idea, Mr. Brossard. Unfortunately, I don't follow either